Hellraiser is a 1987 horror film directed and screenplay written by Clive Barker, based on the 1986 novella The Hellbound Heart, also by Clive Barker. So, we know who to blame for this. No, I'm just kidding. I like the Hellraiser series. I really do. I think it's pretty cool. In fact, I've seen all of the movies. Yes, all of them. Even those. Even Fat Pinhead, because that's a thing. But I am a fan of this series. In fact, they even got this big Pinhead guy. Look at how cool that is. I also got this little box here. Lament configuration, a Lammernschaft's box, whatever the hell you want to call it. And it's supposed to open. There we go. Look at that. Now I'm screwed, huh? They're going to be coming for me. All right, let's put that over there. Now, when I say I'm a fan of the series, I really mean the concept, the imagery, the style, stuff like that. And the Cenobites are always just a pleasure whenever they're on screen. They always steal the scene, whatever they're in. Critically speaking, the movies, however, taken as a whole, are okay. None of them are like 10 out of 10, A+, iconic, best film of all time kind of movie. I mean, they're good. They're entertaining. I watched them all. I liked them all, more or less. Kind of. I think the first 4 Hellraiser movies are pretty good. They kind of follow their own continuity. They have their own little story, and they end with Pinhead going to space, because every horror movie went to space in the 90s for some reason.
The battle for the future of mankind is about to be fought across the boundaries of time.
Seemed like a good place to end things, but no, they kept going. I'm not 100% on the story, but I read part of the reason was that the company, they wanted to keep the rights to Hellraiser, and to do that, they had to actually make stuff with that intellectual property. So they would have all these like bottom-of-the-barrel horror movie scripts, and shoehorned Pinhead and the Cenobites in there, and some work, most don't. Now, before I get into the nitty-gritty details of all of that, I first want to talk about the background and production of this movie. Before Hellraiser, there were some other works of Clive Barker's that were adapted into movies, but he really wasn't satisfied with how they came out. So he figured he wanted to give it his own shot. He wanted to make this his directorial debut. Clive Barker asked a movie producer friend of his what kind of parameters he would have to work within for a first-time director. His movie producer friend said that you could probably expect a budget of under $1 million. It would have to mostly be in one location, it would have to have some monsters in it, and you'd have to use probably mostly unknown actors. Clive Barker thought for a second, and he's like, wait a minute, my story, The Hellbound Heart, perfectly fits those parameters. So, Hellraiser was born. One of the best things about the movie, of course, was Doug Bradley's legendary performance as Pinhead. Apparently, Doug Bradley knew Clive Barker since back in high school. He offered Doug Bradley a part in his movie. Apparently, he was also offered a part as one of the moving guys earlier in the movie. Thankfully, he turned that down, and, he's played this for, like 8, 9 movies in a row. So he made his whole career with that one choice right there. So if you didn't know this about the series, this may come as a surprise to you, but the first movie isn't really about Pinhead and the Cenobites. Pinhead and the Cenobites are really just these cool-looking, creepy entities from another realm that are only on screen for like 8 minutes or so. I read somewhere that the evil stepmom Julia was supposed to be the returning villain when they planned to make sequels for this movie, but obviously Pinhead and the other Cenobites really stole the show just from their 8 minutes of screen time. Doug Bradley's face as Pinhead was on the poster for the first movie, and basically every movie after, he became the look of the series. One thing I obviously have to mention about the Hellraiser movie is that the special effects are incredible. These were practical effects. These were not done with CGI. These still look incredible, especially the sequence of Uncle Frank reanimating himself from the spilt blood in that empty room. That looks awesome. That really does. The special effects and the visuals, I think, is the best thing about this movie. Now I'd like to talk about some of the differences between the book and the movie. In both the book and the movie, evil Uncle Frank was this hedonistic pleasure seeker. In the book, he purchased the puzzle box in Germany, and in the movie, he got it in Morocco. I'm pretty sure the book described evil Uncle Frank to be 29 years old, but in the movie, he looks older. So the opening scene of the movie is actually pretty different from the book. One of the differences is that in the book, after Frank opens a puzzle box, the Cenobites show up and they have the little conversation with him, and it's like, do you seek unworldly pleasures? And he says, yes, I do. And then he undergoes this torture, not necessarily physical torture, but they drive him to the point of insanity. They basically overwhelm all his senses. And basically, it goes through all the psychological torture that he goes through. And then when he feels he can't take it anymore, he's laying in the ground on a fetal position and rolling around like a baby saying, please stop. And then the lead Cenobite says, now we can begin. And I'm like, that's a cool intro to the book. The movie, we don't see any of that. He opens the box, he gets hooked like a fish, and then it cuts. And that's it. I feel like that would have been a cooler intro for the movie. Maybe they were trying to save that reveal for later in the movie, till you see the Cenobites like around the halfway mark or whenever they show up. Also in the book, there were a lot more weird little details. Like, for example, Uncle Frank had several weird things that he meant as offerings for the Cenobites, because I guess that's what the merchant who sold him the box told him to do, is have some offerings for them. I don't know how this stuff works. Two of the weirdest things I remember was like he had a jar of his own urine. I'm not sure what the Cenobites would want with that. He also had a plate with several doves' heads on them. So several birds' heads were on a plate. Again, don't know what Pinhead would do with that, but they were there in case they were needed. Another difference between the book and the movie is that in the book, Kirsty's father's name is Rory. In the movie, his name is Larry. Why anyone would change a character's name intentionally to Larry? I have no idea. That could be because they wanted to Americanize the movie a bit or make its nationality more ambiguous, which is something I'll get into later. In the book, when evil stepmom Julia is going through stuff in the old family home, she finds old family photos of Rory and Frank as kids growing up together at different stages in their lives, as young boys, as teenagers, as young adults. However, in the movie, when Julia is going through the stuff, she finds photos of Frank doing sexually explicit stuff with random women throughout his travels in the world. Another difference between the book and the movie is that in the book, Rory cuts his hand when unpacking boxes for the house on a knife or some kind of sharp cutting object. In the movie, he cuts his hand on a nail sticking out of the wall. Not that important of a difference, but it's a difference. A structural difference is that the movie blends the dinner party scene with the other scene where Julia meets half-dead Frank and Kirsty shows up asking if Julia's okay. They blend that into one scene in the movie, probably just for pacing and to save time. But in the book, they were two separate scenes. The book describes Julia's first victim as being a hefty dude, a chubbier guy than he's presented as in the movie. In the movie, Julia kills her victims with a hammer, whereas in the book, she killed them with a knife. In the book, the empty room where all the killings happen is described as literally sucking out the blood and the guts and all the sustenance out of the victims that Julia kills. The room absorbs them, and I guess Frank's essence intakes what the room absorbed. In the movie, it's quick, but we see half-dead zombie Uncle Frank crawling over to the body, I guess to eat it? I don't know. Difference though, in the book, the room absorbs it. In the movie, we see Frank physically walk over to the body and do something with it. I thought the book did a much better job at allowing us to get to know the characters. We know who they are and their motivations and their background and little quirks about them. Good example is that in the book, husband Rory, in the movie Larry, same guy, the dad. Julia was evil and cunning, and he was just madly in love with her, and he would do anything for her. And he was also kind of goofy, like the lovable idiot type. In the movie, you didn't really get that sense. He kind of came across as just like agitated sometimes. Why are you doing this? What's going on?
1 minute you're all over me, and the next, I just don't understand you.
In the book, Julia and Rory successfully actually have sex, while the evil Uncle Frank watches creepily from across the hallway in the spare room. In the movie, the sex scene starts, but then is interrupted when, for some reason, Frank walks over and cuts this rat in half. Why? I don't know. What did this add to anything? He just shows up and cuts a rat like an apple. I don't get it. In the book, the conversation they're having here happens over the phone, whereas in the movie, this takes place at a Chinese restaurant. When Kirsty finds out what's going on and is confronting half-dead Uncle Frank, in the book, she first hits him with the puzzle box in the head before throwing it out the window. In the movie, she just throws it out the window.
Give me the box!
In the book, during Kirsty and Uncle Frank's first encounter, when she was running and hiding from him, she was discovered because she started hiccuping and couldn't stop hiccuping. Hiccups betray us in our worst moments. Whereas in the movie, he just found her. In the book, when Kirsty's in the hospital, She opens the puzzle box. The Cenobites say, all right, you open the box. We got to take you and torture you for the rest of eternity. She says, wait, no, I can bring you to Uncle Frank. And they say, okay, if you can bring us Uncle Frank, we'll take him. We'll leave you.
I can lead you to him, and you can take him back instead of me.
I want to hear him confess himself. Then, maybe.
So Kirsty makes a deal with the Cenobites. There's rules to it. There's a logic to the plot. She takes the Cenobites to Uncle Frank, gets him to confess what he did, how he escaped them. Then they put the hooks in him and take him back to hell or wherever they're from. The deal is done. They leave her alone. That's it. In the movie, for some reason, they still continue to come after Kirsty. Why? I have no idea. It really doesn't keep with any of the logic of the story. Like in the book, the Cenobites were at least fair. There was a deal they made, and they stuck to the deal. In the movie, they just kept coming after her because I guess they needed a cooler ending, or they thought that ending was cooler. But when I watched this, especially after reading the book, it didn't make any sense. In the book, evil stepmom Julia was beheaded or something by this other entity called the Engineer, and then was taken away with this big, blinding light. In the movie, evil Uncle Frank stabbed Julia when Kirsty jumped out of the way in the last second. The book ended with Kirsty walking away from the house and all the destruction and evil stuff that just happened. Kirsty is shaken. She's walking away from the house. She has the puzzle box in her hand. She bumps into this weird guy, and then she's like, wait, where'd the puzzle box go? She turns around, and it was that other entity called the Engineer. He had the puzzle box, and he looks at her and then keeps going. So it kind of had this creepy, open-ended ending to it. Whereas in the movie, Kirsty and her boyfriend go to this field and throw the puzzle box into a fire, and then this creepy bum picks up the box, and he catches on fire, and then he turns into this dragon thing, and then it does this like weird transition out of the hull of the box, and it goes back to that market in Morocco. I first watched this movie a couple of years ago, and then I rewatched again for doing this project, and what's funny is I have absolutely no memory of that ending from the movie. Probably because it sucked. The book's ending made sense. It like tied a nice little bow at the end of this creepy story. What the hell is going on here? What's with this bum? What's with this dragon? Why are we back in Morocco? Next, I want to talk about some things that were only in the movie version of this story. At the beginning, the salesman has this line where he says,
"Take it. It's yours. It always was."
You know, and I don't mind that addition. I think that's kind of creepy. He was this like pleasure-seeking, evil hedonist going throughout the world, doing debauchery and destruction. Basically, this box was always yours. It was always going to be yours. I kind of like that little twist to it. The movie adds a whole nother character of Kirsty's boyfriend. I don't even remember his name because he really doesn't matter. He doesn't have anything to do with the plot. He like eats this cigarette, which is weird, but she finds it kind of attractive, I guess. The movie also adds the fact that Kirsty works in a pet store.
Where's the manager?
That's a problem too because he's out to lunch right now.
I want to see somebody in charge.
The movie also adds this other character of this weird hobo bum guy who creepily stares at Kirsty for a couple scenes in the movie. You don't know what he's doing, and then, like I said, at the very end of the movie, turns out that he was this other entity in the book known as the Engineer. What that added to anything besides the fact that it was just kind of creepy, don't know. I don't really think it contributed much to the quality of the story. When we transition into the scene where Kirsty is in the hospital, we see this interesting rose petal transition. I don't know what that's supposed to symbolize, or, oh, it's the nurse's TV. She's watching rose petals for some reason. I don't know. That's stupid. I don't like that. The fact that the house was bleeding towards the end was kind of cool, but again, only in the movie, not mentioned in the book. The very end of the Hellraiser movie takes place back at the same market in Morocco where Uncle Frank bought the puzzle box. I guess they're trying to do this monkey's paw type of thing. Kind of reminds me of the intro of Gremlins, you know, like buying this mysterious thing from a mysterious market, from a mysterious seller.
I'm sorry. Mogwai not for sale.
One thing that this movie added, which was not in the book, but was in a number of the other Hellraiser sequels, was this spinning wooden pillar of death, or whatever the hell this thing is. I don't know. I think it's kind of cool, though. You know, it's just part of the visual language of this movie after a point, a visual language of the series. It's never named. I don't know what its purpose is, but when you see that spinning pillar, you better get your ass out of there. At the very end of the movie, after the Cenobites take Uncle Frank, and for unknown reasons, they're still attacking Kirsty, the movie adds the fact that Kirsty maneuvers the puzzle box, clicks some levers on it, spins some things, makes it back into the cube that it originally was. As she's putting the pieces back together, for some reason, that defeats the Cenobites. It sends them back to their realm. That wasn't in the book. In the book, like I said, there was a logic to the plot. They completed their deal, and they left. In the movie, I'm guessing they were like, well, this isn't creepy enough. Let's have the Cenobites keep attacking her because it's scary, you know? It's like, well, how's she going to defeat them? They're like these demons from another realm. I don't know. The puzzle box brought them into this realm. How would she plays with it, and that sends them back? Like, okay, great idea. I mentioned a couple times that the movie throws in some stuff that's just to scare you. It really doesn't contribute much to the plot. So the movie adds this weird dream sequence that Kirsty has. Don't really know what it symbolizes besides the fact that there's blood and it looks weird. When Kirsty's working at the pet store, there's these two really loud jump scares involving a monkey. Why? I don't know. But it made you jump. This additional hobo character does some weird stuff, like he eats these crickets. Again, why is this hobo character eating crickets? No idea. Don't know. They threw it in like, hey, well, let's make this creepy. I don't know, have him eat some crickets or something. There's this well-known scene in the movie where when Kirsty is in the hospital, the walls open up and she goes down this creepy corridor, and there's this big blob-like worm creature that chases her for like a minute. That's not in the book. It's not really a named creature. I don't know who it is, what its purpose is. I thought it's cool. It looked great. It's just like that wasn't in the book. And again, that scene didn't really add anything to the plot. It didn't drive the characters forward. It just made her run around and made you go, oh my God, what's that? But nothing came of it. And then at the very end of the movie, the monster thing from the hospital shows up and attacks Kirsty for, again, reasons I don't understand. In the movie, what was with this head filled with maggots? That wasn't in the book. And again, I think it was just there to scare the viewers. The book was a pretty solid story. Then you watch the movie and you're like, what's all this extra crap? Another weird little thing to talk about when it comes to the Hellraiser movie is it has what they call a dual citizenship feel to it. So Clive Barker is British. In the book, it's set in England. It's set somewhere in the UK. They had the production crew Americanize parts of the movie in post-production. And on set too, I suppose. So here's some of the weird little things that I noticed that contribute to the dual citizenship, or as I call it, the where the hell does this movie actually take place feeling. So in the movie, the evil stepmom Julia has a English accent while everyone else speaks American English. The movie never really says where it's taking place. It's obviously not the US, just from the way the house looks. I haven't really seen many houses like that here in the US. Apparently the actor for Uncle Frank, he is British. In post-production, they had someone dub over all his lines with an American accent, and this sometimes leads to questionable results.
My nerves are beginning to work again. Don't want Babe to hear.
It does lead to this like weird uncanny effect when you're watching some of his scenes and you start thinking, is that really coming from that guy? I don't know. In the movie, at the dinner party scene, Larry makes this little throwaway line.
Absolutely not. This is the night of the paper hat here. We're celebrating.
Which is implying that, at least I'm guessing that it's Christmas, because in the UK, they wear those stupid little paper hat crown things for Christmas. Larry also makes a comment to Kirsty that they moved from Brooklyn.
Maybe we shouldn't have come back. Brooklyn certainly wasn't any worse than this.
And because the movie is filmed in the UK, it makes me think when I'm watching this that, oh, they moved from Brooklyn to England. But no, I guess the studio wanted you to think that they moved from Brooklyn to wherever in not New York City this is supposed to be. Also, speaking of New York City, when Kirsty falls and these onlookers come to check on her fallen body, this one dude is wearing a Yankees cap. Now I'd like to talk about some details that were only in the book version of this story. One of the details that I liked in the book that was not in the movie, or really any of the sequels, maybe it was in one, but I can't really remember, was that it's a music box. It makes little bells, chimes, makes a little melody. That's not in the movies. I just thought it adds another creepy little element to it. When talking about the Hellraiser story, a lot of people like to say that the movie versions of the Cenobites, they're described differently, and the book has a lot more weird details that weren't really present in the movies. Some of those details, for example, include that when the Cenobites show up, they were described to have this luminous glow to them, kind of like deep-sea fish. The book also described the Cenobites as smelling like vanilla. Several times the book refers to the Cenobites as being part of the Order of the Gash. What that is, I don't know. In the movie, and I don't think in any of the sequels, they mention the Order of the Gash. It doesn't really contribute to the plot, but it does add more of world building. You know, there's some kind of structure to where these things come from. Doug Bradley's performance as Pinhead is one of the most iconic horror monster villain performances. He's on that Mount Rushmore with all the other Freddy, Jason, Chucky. Obviously, Doug Bradley is a dude. He's a guy. He's got this big, booming, scary voice. He's tall. In the book, he was never described as male. In fact, none of them are really given a specific sex or gender. In fact, there's one line where in the beginning when they're torturing Uncle Frank, he describes him as these horrible, sexless things. So I guess some people took issue with the fact that they made Pinhead very male. I don't mind though. I mean, like I said, I love Doug Bradley's performance. In fact, he's a cool dude. Doug Bradley has his own channel where he reads horror stories. Reads like Edgar Allan Poe in his creepy British voice. Go check it out. Only in the book, there's also a scene where Rory comes home drunk and horny from a work holiday party, and he's trying to get it on with Julia, and in that process, he almost discovers what's going on with his evil brother Frank coming back from the dead. And I think that's when Julia seduces him to distract him, and then Frank watches from the shadows, and Julia imagines he's actually having sex with Frank, whereas in the movie, he walks up and slices this rat open. It's a good story. Next, I want to talk about some random fun thoughts I had while watching this movie. At the beginning, I think the merchant guy is drinking absinthe. The guy is getting hammered while he sells people's souls away. Also in the movie, when Frank is buying the puzzle box, holy shit, he needs to clean his fingernails. I don't know if it's just me, but Kirsty's response when she's trying to squeeze past these moving guys is just weird to me.
Do you want to buy a bed?
Not much.
Not much doesn't seem like the right response to want to buy a bed. I would say not really. Much implies quantity, like how much do you want to buy a bed? Oh, not much, but thinking too much about that one. I like how in the movie they got the address for the house, 55 Ludovico Street. They got that correct. I know I've said it before, but it bears repeating that Doug Bradley as Pinhead steals the goddamn show in this movie. He doesn't say much, but what he does say, you remember.
Demons to some, angels to others. Oh, no tears, please. It's a waste of good suffering. We'll tear your soul apart.
Everything he does is 10 out of 10, intense evil. An interesting bit of trivia about the character Pinhead is that he's never actually officially called Pinhead. Pinhead is just a name that the fans gave him and it stuck, and I think I've read that Clive Barker is not even that big of a fan of the name, but I mean, come on. Look at him. He's got pins in his head. I think the first time he's actually referred to as Pinhead is towards the end of the third Hellraiser movie when this lady is running away from him and she says,
Play with this Pinhead!
I like the way Kirsty's boyfriend dresses. It looks so 1980s, but in a weird way, it also looks very modern. It looks like he could be some Zoomer hipster from 2020. A little nitpick I have with both the book and the movie is that neither really explain how Kirsty left the hospital. She just kind of goes back to the house. You know, it's implied she escaped, she snuck out, she bypassed all the security guards, but we don't see any of that. I just love this little shot where the Butterball guy is putting on the sunglasses. I'm surprised no one's made that like a reaction gif yet. So, in conclusion, if you were interested in checking out the Hellraiser story, and you haven't done so yet, would I recommend that you read the Hellbound Heart or watch the first Hellraiser movie? I think the book wins. The book, to me, wins in terms of plot logic and the pacing and getting to know the characters. The movie, like I said, just has a lot of random scary crap thrown in just to make you go, ah, what was that? But it really doesn't add to anything. The reason you should watch the movie is because of the special effects. Like, Pinhead, he makes the whole movie. This is one of the most iconic performances in horror movie history. Heck, you could even just go into the movie and just watch the 8 minutes that he's in, and you won't miss much else. I hate to say it, but that's about all I have for today. If you've made it this far, thank you. I really appreciate you watching this far, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.